and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. In this video, I want to talk about my pile of possibilities for the Read Good Challenge 2025. I'm participating in a bunch of different reading challenges this year, and one of them is the Read Good Challenge by Ben at Ben Reads Good. I really enjoy his content, and I heard about this challenge last year, but I think I heard about it too late, so I didn't feel like I could participate last year, but this year I'm going to. I have picked out books that I'm interested to read for all of the prompts, and so I'm going to go through those. And I also am going to mention if I have a recommendation for any of the prompts that I have read. I will put timestamps for each of the months. I will also leave links in the description to Ben's announcement video and to the Storygraph challenge. I think that's all I needed to say, so let's move on to the prompts. So the first prompt is Ann-uary. Read a book by an author called Ann or with Ann in the title. And any kind of variation on Ann also count. I've seen a lot of creative solutions to this prompt on the Storygraph challenge where people just add books with any kind of AN in the title or the author's name, like Samantha or like Animal. Maybe there aren't too many people called Ann to choose from, but there are, a bunch of them. One option that I found on my shelf that I think would work better than Samantha is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This was one of my options that I didn't end up reading, but this could totally work. I would recommend Stolen by Ann-Helén Laestadius. Literary thriller written by an author who is Sami, which is the indigenous people of Scandinavia. They herd reindeer and they are being attacked by non-Sami people. The book that I read for this prompt was Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid, which is a coming-of-age story about a girl living in Antigua, and it's kind of autobiographical, but it's a fictional story. It wasn't my favorite of all time, but it was an interesting read, and I had been wanting to read something from Jamaica Kincaid for a long time, so yeah, I'm glad I checked that box. The prompt for February is Flame-uary. Read a book with fire on the cover. If it has fire in the title, that's a bonus, but the point is to have a picture of a fire. One of my options is Oil on Water by Helon Habila, and this is set in Nigeria. It's part thriller, part meditation on the deadly cost of the region's oil politics, a classic coming-of-age narrative. I'm very intrigued by this. It's not very long, so this is very doable, and definitely has flame on the cover. And then I have these two books, The Miniaturist and The House of Fortune by Jessie Burton. And these are, a series. I would love for them to be the same size, but alas, they are not. And that's what happens when you order things online sometimes. I read The Miniaturist a few years ago and loved it, and it does have a little fire in the fireplace. And the same goes for House of Fortune, which I have not read. Historical fiction set in Amsterdam in 1686. A few other options that I have on my want to read list are Fire Exit by Morgan Talty, which is contemporary fiction, maybe a bit thrillery, I think, by an indigenous American author. The Hymn to Dionysus by Natasha Pulley, that's a Greek mythology retelling. A Burning by Megha Majumdar, and this is about a catastrophe in India. The prompt for March is Ides of March, which is to read a book with 15 letters in the title. And I don't know how many books I have counted the letters of. The only one that I could find on my shelves that I had read with 15 letters in the title was The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. This is a young adult fantasy trilogy, and this is the first part in the series, and I really enjoyed it. Clean and safe and clear, and yeah, just a fun time. And then I have a few different options of books that I probably will read this year, so either one of these could work for this prompt. The first one is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And this is a Swedish translation, but I'm going with the English title. You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat. And this is a memoir about a lesbian Muslim woman, I think. Killer Potential by Hannah Deach, which is a new release that I will have on audiobook in March. That is a darkly funny thrill ride. set in Los Angeles. And yeah, I'm very excited about that one. And then just because I spent so much time counting the letters of titles for this prompt, I'm going to give you some more options. These are books that I am interested to read that all have 15 letters in the title. The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, The King's Witches by Kate Foster, and A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. The Memory Police and A Winter's Promise are also translated, so those will work for a later prompt as well. The prompt for April is to read a book that has been nominated for the Women's Prize, either fiction or nonfiction. A few that I could recommend are The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff, contemporary fiction set in India. The Maiden by Kate Foster, which is a historical murder mystery set in 1600s Scotland. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, retelling of Greek mythology. And Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, which is amazing. And then I have 3 options for what I'm going to read for this prompt. My Sister the Serial Killer by Oikan Braithwaite, which I think is kind of darkly funny, thrillery, I don't know, a fun time. And like the genius I am, I filmed this a couple of days before the announcement of this year's long list for fiction. And so I do want to add a couple of more books in. The first one is The Dream Hotel by Leila Lalami, which is a dystopian novel where dreams are under surveillance and you can be arrested for being about to commit a crime based on the data from your dreams. I would also really like to read Fundamentally by Naseba Yunus, which is a darkly comic novel about a woman who is dumped and takes an assignment from the UN to go to Iraq and work with rehabilitation of ISIS brides. I also have 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes about the women in Greek mythology and like surrounding the war. What's it called? The Troy War? The Trojan War? What's it called? The Trojan War? What's it called? Trojan War, that's what it's called. Moving on. The prompt for May is Déjà Vu, and that is to reread a book or read another book from an author that you have read from before. I am going to reread To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which I read back in school sometime, and I remember loving it then, and I would really like to read that now again as an adult, or like, you know, I don't really have recommendations for that because I don't know what you have read. And the same goes for the next prompt, which is for June, and that is Reading Shame Forgiveness Month. So this is to read a book that you are ashamed that you haven't read yet, and you get a free pass on that. So I have 2 options for this. The first one is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, which I have had on my shelf and on my want to read mental list for years and years and years, and I just have never gotten to it. The emotional impact of it is intimidating to me, and so yeah, that's why I keep procrastinating on reading this. And then I also have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I have seen the show and love and hate it in all of the ways that you can love and hate it. I think that it's a fascinating story, and the concept and the cinematography and all of that is fantastic and I love it, but I would really like to have read the book. The prompt for July is to read a book in translation, and I have done that already, and so the book that I read for this prompt was Crooked Plow by Itamar Vieira Jr. This is translated from Portuguese. This is set in Brazil a few decades after the abolition of slavery there. This follows 2 sisters in a Black family and community, and so where their ancestors have been enslaved and they are living in the time after slavery. And the book starts with the 2 sisters finding a knife and cutting their own tongues, and it's very intense at the start, but it's a very beautiful story, and yeah, highly recommend this one. I would also recommend Marina, which is a young adult horror novel set in Barcelona and translated from the Spanish. Wonderfully scary and also beautiful, and the writing is beautiful. It's very atmospheric, gothic. It's a young boy and he meets a girl, and there's a house and a mysterious woman and a graveyard, and yeah, highly recommend this one. A couple of other options that I had for this on my shelves were Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante, or you could read anything else by Elena Ferrante, which would have been translated from Italian. And I also have Forgotten on Sunday by Valérie Perron, which would have been translated from the French. And then, like I mentioned, The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. The Door by Magda Szabo is also on my list. Yeah, lots of fun stuff to choose from. The prompt for August is to read a book by a Booker Prize winning author. And for this one, I have two options if I can find them. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. And then I also have The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. Yeah, I think these are both very strong contenders. Other than that, I haven't really read a lot of Booker Prize winners, so no more recommendations for you on that. The prompt for September is Sapphire September, and so this is to read a book with a blue cover. My choice is probably going to be Forgotten on Sunday by Valérie Perron, because I love this cover and I'm very curious to read this book. It is about a woman who works in a nursing home, and she's told the story of a woman who lives there, and then the phone rings and that shocks the nursing home to its core. And I just think that sounds like a fantastic setup, and yeah, I can't wait to read this book with the blue cover. Plenty of the books that I've already mentioned also have blue covers, like Stolen by Ann-Helén Laestadius, The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton, Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, and The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. All fantastic choices. Other options that I have on my list are The Break by Katarina Vermette. I think that's the one where there's like someone falls through the ice, or there's a crime outside her window or something. I can't remember what the premise is, but it sounds very intriguing to me. I would also love to read Blackwood's Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivey, which is a new release this year, and a retelling of The Beauty and the Beast, I think, but set in Alaska. A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos would also be a good option for this prompt. The prompt for October is Ug-tober, so to read a book with an ugly cover. And this is highly subjective. The ugliest cover that I have on my shelves is this one. This is The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. And I just hate this cover so much. I think it's so bad. There's nothing good about this cover at all. I think the book is really good. I haven't read it, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and the cover is just not, it's horrendous. And so yeah, this is one of my options. And then I also think that the cover for Sister Sinner by Claire Hoffman is horrible. Sister Sinner, The Miraculous Life and Mysterious Disappearance of Amy Semple McPherson. This is a nonfiction book coming out in March of 2025, and it is about the most famous woman evangelist of the time, and she walked into the Pacific Ocean and disappeared, and then she showed up in the desert and claimed to have been kidnapped, and there was a whole thing, and I know nothing about that, but it sounds fascinating. But the cover could use some love. The prompt for November is No Comfort November. So this is to read something outside of your comfort zone. And nonfiction as a genre is generally out of my comfort zone, and I think that this book in particular is outside of my comfort zone, and that is Disability Visibility, an anthology edited by Alice Wong, who is a disability rights activist. And there are just so many stories in this book. I'm about a quarter of the way through as I'm filming this. It's been incredible so far and very eye-opening and heartbreaking and heartwarming and just wonderful, and I think everyone should read this. So if you haven't already and No Comfort November rolls around, this is my recommendation for you. I would also recommend The Mare by Angharad Hampshire for this prompt. This is a very uncomfortable read. This is historical fiction, and it's based on a true person and true events. This is the story of a woman called Hermine Braunsteiner who worked as a concentration camp guard in Nazi Germany. And we get her perspective as she starts working that job. And we also get her husband's perspective years later when he finds out about her past. It's a very heavy topic, but the chapters are very short, and it just has so much momentum and pace. And so yeah, it's a very fascinating and interesting read, and also very uncomfortable based on the subject matter and just the sort of challenging questions that this book asks. And yeah, highly recommend this one. Some other options that I had saved for this prompt were Uncomfortable Labels by Laura Kate Dale. This is a memoir, and the subtitle is My Life as a Gay Autistic Trans Woman. Some People Need Killing by Patricia Evangelista, which is set in the Philippines, I think. And then I also have In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, which is a memoir about domestic abuse, I think, in same-sex relationships. I've heard that is a very emotional but good read. And then the final prompt for December is Decem-bros, which is to read a book about brothers or brotherhood. And this was kind of a reaction to all of the books about sisters and sisterhood. And it can also be about the sister of the family, but like the relationship to her brother or something like that. I have a couple of options. The first one is People Person by Candice Carty Williams. This is about a group of siblings, I think, or like half siblings. They all have the same father and he has passed away. I think that's what it is. And they come together and, you know, drama ensues. My other option is a book that I have been wanting to reread for a while. And this would be a comfort read. It's a Swedish children's classic by Astrid Lindgren, and this is The Brothers Lionheart. It's heartbreaking and heartwarming and beautiful, and there are cherry blossoms and, you know, doves and horses and dragons, and this follows two young brothers and their adventures. I also had a couple of other options saved on my list for this prompt. The first one is All the Noise at Once by Deandra Davis, and I think this is about two brothers, and one of them is on the autism spectrum and the other one is accused of a crime or something along those lines, and they have to sort of navigate that. And then there's also a book that I think is a new release, which is The Book of Guilt by Catherine Chidgey. I just recently picked up Pet by Catherine Chidgey, so I'm going to read this first and see what I think of it. If I love it, I might read The Book of Guilt, which is about three brothers, I think. And then there's also a 13th wildcard prompt called Agatha All Along, which is to read any book by Agatha Christie. And so if you're struggling with any of the other prompts, you can swap out that prompt for this prompt. And this is dedicated to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. She loved reading Agatha Christie, and so this is in honor of her. I have actually read an Agatha Christie book this year already, and that was And Then There Were None. I also have Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie on my shelves, so if I decide to change my mind on any of the prompts, I have this to pick up. So that's my pile of possibilities slash options slash recommendations for the Read Good challenge. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you found some inspiration and maybe a book or two to pick up for the different prompts. If you have any other recommendations for anyone, you can leave them in the comments, or you can join the challenge on Storygraph and add the books there, and then everyone can see them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. The Maiden by The Maiden. Kate Foster.